This is Dads Watching Sports. It's the show by dads who watch sports, for dads who watch sports, or just dads in general. Here are the dads with a plan for every hashtag dad life and sports fan, Kyle Castles and Michael Draper.
Welcome in, one and all, to Dad's Watching Sports. I am Michael Draper, and he is Kyle Castles, and we are back on your airwaves after a little bit of a sabbatical. It is good to be back with you, Kyle. Looking back through our recordings, it has been quite some time since you and I have had an opportunity to, on a live setting, address the masses, the dads out there.
It has. It's been a minute, as the kids say. But it's good to be back.
It is. No, it absolutely is. And looking at kind of where we last landed with Dads Watching Sports. So those of you that are the diehard dads out there. So if you guys remember, we had our last episode was on the 13th of February. We had a recorded episode that was Super Bowl Sunday with Damon West, Mr. B, a coffee bean. So Kyle, and then the week before that, or 2 weeks before that, Kyle, you were not on our show. I was with Jacob Scrimshire. So we got to go all the way back to January 16th, Kyle. So almost 2 months. 2 months almost since you and I graced these lovely, lovely airwaves together. Have you missed me, Kyle?
Well, of course I've missed you. Look at you. How could I not miss you?
I know. It's good. And it's funny, because I feel like we've gotten so used to doing this about every other week, and we used to do it weekly, that this was our catch-up time. And we've both been so busy, we hadn't had a whole lot of times to even get together outside of this, which has been weird. Although we did have a lovely dinner with our families on Friday, but it's good to see your shining face.
Well, I appreciate that. And dinner Friday was nice until the kids just completely melted down.
In their defense, it was late.
It was late.
We got to a restaurant at like 6:30. They were super busy, and we didn't get out there till like 8:15.
Yeah, something like that. It was
late. So, and your oldest one had just come from baseball practice, so he was probably already a little tired.
Yep.
The four young ones were just. It was just a mess.
Yes, it was. But hey, I had two different types of tacos, but the fish taco Mojo style. Yeah. I'm hoping you told your friend at small group how much I enjoyed it.
I did. We once again, Dave's Mojo's restaurant was a topic of discussion at our small group. And I told him afterwards, I said nothing but glowing reviews from the Draper and Castles family on Friday night. So he was glad to hear that.
Very nice. Very nice.
But Kyle, again, it's been a while. Like, just to give you guys, I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit here, because that's what we do on the Dads Watching Sports show. I was like, what is going on here? You're peeling the curtain. That's good. No, we hadn't done this show in so long. I feel like this could kind of be like an ongoing thing. We hadn't done it in so long. Like, I had to re-log in to StreamYard, which is the program that we use to do. Like, I didn't know my login information. And so I had to reset my password and do all that stuff. Like, it's been that long since we did that. So I had to re-log in. And then I honestly had to pull up what episode we were on, because I had no idea what episode we were even on. And so I believe this is episode 94. But I can't say that with like 100% assurance, but I'm pretty sure it's 94. What do you think, Kyle?
94 episodes. I will go with that. You know me.
Yep.
I'm just the talent. I don't do any of the other stuff.
You're just the beauty and the talent. That's all that's your that's all that you're good for.
But 94 episodes, man. Like, we're inching closer to that century mark.
I know that's gonna be the big thing is if and when do we get to episode 100. I feel confident we'll get there. When it happens, that is a complete crapshoot. I have no idea when that's going to happen. That could be in April. That could be in October. That could be in 2024. I don't know, but we're going to get there one way or the other.
We will give you 6 more episodes, no matter what.
No doubt. It's definitely happening. So Kyle, we'll get into this a little bit later, but I usually I like to put a little description about our episode as we're doing this, whether so somebody can see it live and they're like, oh, I want to check that out, or as people see the name of the episode as they download it in their podcast. And I was trying to come up with one, and I originally just had like "We're Back" or something like that. But I ended up going with "We're Back" like Coach K's second retirement tour, because there's no way he's going out the way that he did on Saturday. And I know they've still got a couple of tournaments, but we're going to get to Coach K in just a little bit and talking about, I don't know if you happen to catch his little post-game shenanigans, but Coach K showing his true colors as he always does, which is always, I love to see it. So it has been like 2 months since we've graced these airways with us doing this kind of a live show. We've had a lot of guests up until now, and I thought let's have a just a bro show, just a show about you and I, and just talking through what we've been through, what's been going on the last couple of months, and then we'll talk a little sports and some dad life along the way. So what's been you and I haven't spent a whole lot of time with each other outside of this. So what's been going on in the Castles household? How's everything going?
It's been kind of crazy. I mean, Lauren's been in the hospital twice. Well, I guess once, but had 2 different surgeries, and which is why I wasn't on the show in
January.
Was that January? My goodness, because she was in the hospital that week, and so it's been crazy there. Other than that, it's just been life and going to work and dealing with kids and that kind of stuff. Wrigley has started baseball, like you just mentioned. That was Friday was his first practice of the season. They were supposed to have practices the week prior, but they all got rained out. So we practiced Friday, Saturday, and today.
Nice.
Yeah. And what's amazing is just how much better he's gotten between last fall and this spring. Just he's gotten a little bit older, a little more mature. That hand-eye coordination's a little better. So it's been fun to watch, these 3 practices and just see him be better. I'm sorry, my dog is barking at who knows what.
Hey, it's my dog is sleeping over here because we drugged our dog before small group so she would remain calm. So she's passed out.
Good for y'all.
Oh yeah, dog parents of the year.
But other than that, Lauren having 2 surgeries and being in the hospital and all. Outside of that, it's been a fairly normal routine. I can't say there's anything been crazy happening other than that.
Yeah.
What about you? What's been going on?
Man, we've just been busy. We've been really busy. Just between work and the kids and everything. We had a 2-week stretch back to back where one kid, we pretty sure teacher tested positive for COVID. So she was home all week. Well, a portion of the week. It's a weird deal where they're out for like 4 or 5 days. They get tested. If they're good, they come back. If we either choose not to test them or they're positive, they have to stay out throughout like the next 5 days or something like that.
Right.
So we had them both home for weeks, back-to-back weeks, individually for back-to-back weeks. And it was so interesting to see, like with Emma, the 5-year-old, you would think that the older kid would be easier in that regard of having to work from home and keeping them home. But that was not the case. And it really was a interesting way to let their personalities kind of shine, because Emma is someone who has to kind of always be around and knowing what's going on and wanting to do what you're doing. Where in our case, it was work. And so like I would be on a work call and she would want to get on it with me. And I mean, my coworkers are good with and fine with that. But like, there was no this like, hey, here's the hundreds of toys that you have, or here's a show, or here's something, entertain yourself. Whereas Hayden is just like, I mean, I could literally was on like 2 or 3 calls back to back, and I just put down, fed him some lunch and put a TV show on the screen. Yeah, parents, you can say you're not going to do screens all you want, but it's going to happen. And he's completely content, and he's playing with his toys and doing that. So it's so interesting to see the 5-year-old being essentially more needy than the 3-year-old during that time. So that was a fun stretch for our family.
Yeah. So I have to ask, and this has nothing to do with anything we've been talking about, but our kids' daycare, school, whatever you want to call it, it has actually cut back hours because they're having such a hard time staffing. Are y'all running into that down there?
We're not seeing that as of yet. I mean, we're definitely short staffed. I mean, I think there have been times, at least just you could probably guess, like there's been times where they've said, hey, we're gonna maybe end a little early, or that you can just tell that they're short staffed and they're moving people around. I mean, like our daughter will tell us everything that goes on inside the classroom because she's got to be involved in everything. So she knows everything that goes on in that classroom. And so she'll come home one day and be like, oh yeah, well, this teacher also came in our class and this teacher came in our class. And it sounds like they're having to do a round robin just to cover everybody. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge deal. Where, I mean, the staffing crisis is hitting a lot of places, much less daycare, but yeah, that's a big one for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're running into it even in the K-12 schools. We got a bunch of spots open. I'm sure you're running into it at the Y.
Oh yeah.
It's insane.
It is. Well, that's kind of a perfect segue into something else I wanted to go into. Kyle, we're like almost 2 years to the day. We've got, I think it's later this week, March 11th is 2 years to the day, kind of when the sports world shut down. COVID, you remember Rudy Gobert tested positive, NBA games shut down. Then the next day it was all the conference tournaments began to fold. There was like a game, I can't remember who it was, that they were literally in the middle of the game. And at halftime, they suspended the rest of the game. The SEC tournament shut down, all the conference tournaments. And then we were thinking, okay, they're going to find a way to get March Madness in. They're going to find a way to do it. And then that doesn't happen either. And then the NBA does their playoffs in the bubble at Disney World, and MLS does the same thing, and baseball plays with no fans. And so here we are 2 years later, and it seems like a majority of the country and frankly the world is kind of like, to hell with this COVID stuff. Like we're done and no more mask and all this and all that. But it's hard to look back, man. 2 years ago, when this all kind of started, here we had just started a podcast about sports, and there were no sports.
What sports, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard to believe. We're 2 years in. There's still a little bit of this lingering around.
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands of millions of lives have been lost. It's just bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when all of that started, I never once thought we're going to be 2 years past that and still talking about COVID.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, this will be a month or two worth of shutting down, but then we'll be back to normal. And I think we have this new normal where COVID, right? Coronavirus, whatever you call it, is going to be around in some form moving forward. And we're going to let people, like the flu.
Yep.
And people are going to get sick. People are going to die because of it, just like with the flu. And we're just going to keep on keeping on. And if you get sick, you stay home. When you feel better, come back. I think that's where we're headed. And I'm glad, as bad as it sounds, I'm kind of glad that we're at this point where we can just say, hey, you're sick, you go on, and we're going to keep doing life.
Yeah.
Instead of shutting everything down. I like having my sports back. I'm looking forward to sneaking time at work to watch the conference tournaments.
No doubt.
This week, the second half of this week, and especially that first Friday of the first Thursday and Friday of the tournament to see all those first round upsets. Those are always a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's you made a lot of interesting points there, and I do think that this is we've kind of talked about it. This is kind of our new normal, so to speak. It will be, it's interesting to see. just from a work life standpoint, nothing to do with sports, but just thinking through, like, back in the day, and this is 3 years ago, back in the day, not 15, 20. I mean,
Right.
people would come into work sick as a dog, but they came in because they had to work. And now I think that is completely gone.
Oh yeah. If you don't feel good, you're staying home.
Yeah, and it's I mean, I guess it's a good thing. We've adopted this expectation of, like, if you're not feeling well, you don't need to come into work, and you need to take a day or however long. So I think that's good. But yeah, it's just wild from a sports standpoint to think, like, I mean, in our lifetimes, I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. I mean, I pray to God we hope we don't, in terms of just not only the overall implications of a pandemic or anything that could be associated with it or close to it, but just where our whole sports world shuts down. And I know that's not even remotely as important as real world and life and death and things like that. But I mean, if you just look, just thinking back through that, I mean, everything shut down and everybody was so afraid of it. And then we had these bubbles where these sports leagues tried to run, their playoff systems and all this stuff. And then no fans, thinking back through, we're coming up on March Madness, thinking back through last year where it was all held in Indianapolis and they were doing all these tests ahead of time. And there were what, like 10,000 fans in attendance, or maybe not even that, in the Lucas Oil Field.
It was empty.
Yeah. And so, man, I'm so glad that we're back to normal, and I know everybody is, but it's just looking back 2 years ago, and I'm sure there'll be all kinds of stuff this week about it, but just, man, what a wild 2 years it's been.
Oh, it's been crazy, and you're right. It's good to be back to some semblance of normal, and look at us now. We're looking forward to conference tournaments, and we're looking forward to March Madness, and maybe we'll get a baseball season this year. Maybe we won't. There's some other things going on in the world that I'm not going to bring up yet, because I don't know if we're actually going to talk about them on the show. But we got all kind of stuff going on that's not COVID, and COVID isn't dominating every thought and every news story. And to me, that's a wonderful thing.
It is. Well, that is a good segue. I mean, I think, we'd be remiss if we, I feel like on this show, we try to at least talk about what's going on in the world. And we've done this before with COVID, with the George Floyd incident, or his death, his murder. We've done it with a couple of different things over the course of what is now 94 episodes. I think we at least have to acknowledge, what's going on in Eastern Europe. With the conflict there between Ukraine and Russia. You and I were talking about this kind of before the show. It's hard for us to really put ourselves in the position to think about how that's impacting us to a degree, because, I would imagine a vast majority of Americans, other than just being a little concerned about it, there's not a whole lot of implication, at least right now, based off of what's happening. I told you that our church does a mission in Moldova, which is the neighboring country to Ukraine. You mentioned that the word on the street is Moldova could be the next country that they attack. And our church does an orphanage mission there. And we've got a couple of sponsored children that we sponsor that live there. And so obviously that's kind of near and dear to us. But, I was pretty open with you before the show. I was like, man, I'll be honest. Other than just kind of knowing a little bit about it, I don't know a whole lot about why this is happening. What are the implications? Is this a one and done type of thing for Putin and Russia, or is this we're trying to rebuild the Soviet Union? So what's your take on what's going on? I mean, you are a history person. You're in social studies and world economics and all that kind of stuff. What's your take on what's going over there in Europe?
So if you just listen to Putin, he has said that he wants to rebuild Russia to the Soviet Union borders. If he decides to do that, he's going to have to start looking at some NATO countries. If he invades NATO countries, NATO, which includes us, has already said we're going to jump in and not allow that to happen. So that's where it gets real scary real fast for us. Why he's doing it, I think there's something about the borders. The Ukraine has been trying to join the EU and NATO. They have made it clear. And I think he did not want to see either one of those things happen. But there is some similarities between Putin's actions and the actions of Adolf Hitler prior to World War II. I'm not saying that this is the start of World War III. It could be. It absolutely could be. But I'm not saying that that's where we're headed. It's a scary time in Eastern Europe. Putin has put his nuclear forces on high alert, which means he's another step closer to launching nuclear weapons, and that is terrifying. And the real tragedy is watching, and Lauren and I, we've been watching a lot of news now, just keeping up with what's going on. And seeing, so the president of the Ukraine is still in Kyiv, which is the capital of Ukraine.
Right.
And he's putting out these decrees and he's putting out these videos and he's talking to world leaders from, my guess would be, various spots around, in and around Kyiv, so that he's not in one spot too long, to keep the Russians guessing where he's at. But he actually put out a decree that said that if you were between, I think, 18 and 60,
yep,
and a male, you were not allowed to leave the country. You were supposed to take up an arm and fight.
Yeah.
And so, we're watching these mothers with kids drive and walk across the Ukrainian-Polish border or Ukrainian-Moldovan border. And these people, I mean, these families are getting ripped apart here.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just the heart-wrenching part of all of it is knowing that, there was a video of a man and his daughter.
Yep.
And she was, did you see it?
Mm-hmm.
She was distraught. And
those kids don't understand. I mean, there's no way that they understand what's going on or why it's happening or why, we are leaving dad behind. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. I think that can often get lost in all this is, that will impact a generation. If things continue to go south here, for Ukraine, of just, families getting ripped apart. And like you said, we've seen that before, and that's definitely what's a scary thing. I think, to kind of tie it, and not to make light of any situation, but to kind of tie it again into sports. I don't know if you saw the Klitschko brothers, former, world heavyweight champion boxers. I think one of them's a mayor of one of the towns in Ukraine now. I mean, these are guys that are multimillionaires, who basically said, "Hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm raising up my arms." And I think that's been something for me that's been really inspiring for that country. Is they're just like, I mean, we're not backing down. We may not win this thing, but we're not backing down. And I my hope and prayer is that our country sees that, and we still have that mentality of not backing down from a fight. So it's wild.
Well, it's a whole lot easier to say I'm not backing down when the fight's being,
on your front door.
Yeah, at your front door, versus halfway around the world.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. No doubt there. And unfortunately, there's no easy segue to get away from that topic. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers are for, everybody in that part of the world. I would say the Ukrainians, I would say the Russians, I would say Moldova, everybody in that part of the world, have our thoughts and prayers with them, because that's an unimaginable thing that I hope we never have to face. And so we want to lift those people up for sure. Yep. Getting back into the sports world a little bit, Kyle. We since you and I were last on the show together, we had a Super Bowl, and it was a dark one at that. The Rams, LA Rams. Who would have thunk it, a while back, that they were going to make this run and end up the Super Bowl champs. Matthew Stafford finally gets a Super Bowl ring to kind of validate his career to a degree. Joe Burrow and the Bengals falling, just a little short. I mean, they had some chances. They made a few plays, but just couldn't quite get it done. I don't know that you and I've really talked about the Super Bowl much. So I know we got to dig back almost a month in our to it, but I know you're a big football guy. So what was your overall thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Well, it felt good watching the game because it all came down to, my people, the big guys up front. And it came down to the fact that the Bengals could not handle that Rams pass rush. And I mean, that came all the way down to the final offensive play for the Bengals, and Aaron Donald was just unblockable. He made some amazing plays. Probably the best play he made was the run there on 3rd and short. And I've never seen anything like it. This man's got to be the strongest man in the history of humankind. Because I'm pretty sure it was Joe Mixon takes the handoff. Aaron Donald beats the guard and with one arm grabs a full running Joe Mixon with one arm and keeps him from getting to the first down line. And it was absolutely amazing that he didn't tear his shoulder doing that. And he was able to just pull a grown man running full speed backwards with one arm. I mean, he's a freak. I know that there were rumors that that would be his last game if they won. If it is, he went out on a good note.
Yep.
I felt bad for Joe Burrow. I said it on this show. I was pulling for the Bengals throughout the playoffs. I did not expect them to make it all the way to the Super Bowl.
It's pretty amazing ride. Yeah, I mean, they knocked off forgot who they beat in the first round. Man, that's
wasn't the Titans. The Titans were second round.
Titans were either way. I mean, they went through Nashville and Kansas City, and someone else that we can't remember. If you're checking this out on the live stream,
was it Pittsburgh?
Maybe.
It may have been Pittsburgh.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think you might be right there. Either way,
yeah,
heck of a run.
And if they build this team correctly. And saying that they need more help on the offensive line. That got obviously real obvious. I mean,
right.
The Titans had, 9 sacks or some ungodly number like that against them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lack of protection there at the end of the game in the Super Bowl cost them that ball game too. If they can protect Joe Burrow, he's got enough weapons that there's no reason they can't be back.
Yeah.
The Rams, on the other hand, they spent a lot of draft capital to build the team they got. They were in win now mode, and they won now. The question is, what's coming back? Does Aaron Donald come back? Without him, I don't know that they win that ball game. So we'll see. But I was happy for Matthew Stafford. I was happy for Aaron Donald, especially Aaron Donald. I mean, he's a generational player, and those types of guys you always want to see get a ring.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I was really impressed with, I mean, you look across the both rosters, LA was I think the favorite and deservedly so. I mean, they had more talent. You just mentioned they spent money to win now. But I was really impressed with, I mean, they lost arguably their best player, definitely their best offensive player in OBJ in the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, you knew the minute he went down, it was non-contact. You knew he was done, and they didn't kind of let that really throw him off. I mean, they didn't. They could have folded right then and there, and I think that's a true testament to their team and their ability. And I agree. I think Joe Burrow is going to have some more opportunities in his career. I mean, I hope he does. I hope this isn't a Marino situation where he gets there his first year and then never goes back. But, I agree. I think Matthew Stafford was good to see him have that opportunity. Seems like a good guy, SEC guy. Yeah. See him to do that. That was pretty cool. So what you think about the halftime show?
I love the halftime show.
It was awesome. Man, it was awesome, wasn't it? We had some I guess I would say friends over. It was really more of their daughter and Emma are friends in school, and so we invited them to come over to hang out, and so we had them over, and we were all like, "Oh, hey kids, now's the time you go upstairs for like 15 minutes." So we sent all the kids upstairs, and we watched the halftime show, and man, yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we loved it. Lauren says it's the best halftime show ever. I think it's second behind that Prince show. I mean, it's hard to beat Purple Rain as the rain's driving down. Yeah. Like that was, and I'm a big Prince fan, so I'm a little biased there. But I'm also a Dre fan. I'm a Snoop fan. I like him. The one thing that threw me off was 50 Cent.
50 Cent was more like $1.50. I mean, I know it's hard for you and I to talk about somebody's weight, but my man had packed it on. Yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, just the nostalgia alone. I mean, that's if you're anywhere from 30 to 40, I mean, that was the music that we kind of grew up on in our later high school years. Later high school years. So yeah, it was solid. I don't think there's nobody in our age range that would have looked at that and been like, "Oh, this is terrible and this is awful and this new age music." I didn't really get the what was the other guy that was
Kendrick Lamar.
I couldn't name one lyric of one song of his, but I didn't really get how he fit in. But other than that, I thought it was solid.
They had to put somebody in to try and grab those 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
And he's a big name. We teach high school. You hear about rappers, and Kendrick Lamar is one of them.
Sure.
And so, like, whatever, he had a little bit of time there, but Mary J. Blige did Mary J. Blige things, and she sounded great.
Yep. Overall, A+ from the Draper household. Sounds like from the Castles household as well.
Oh yeah.
One thing I thought was really interesting, I don't know if you saw this after the game. I think it was maybe NFL Films or somebody had these little short clips of during the game. Burrow would like go up to guys and introduce himself. So like there was a moment when I guess Aaron Donald came up close to him and he was like, "Hey, Aaron." He's like, shook his hand. He's like, "Joe, nice to meet you, man." And like just these like really like honest, just wholesome moments where he's like, "Man," I mean, my guess is he's probably thinking, I may never be in this situation again. I've never met these guys. So I'm just going to introduce myself. And I think it was him and I don't know if it was Jalen Ramsey or somebody, but they were basically saying like, "Hey, I really appreciate how good you are at your craft," and talking to each other about that. And I thought that was so cool from a sportsmanship standpoint of just being in that arena, in that moment, to just be like, "Man, I'm just Joe, man. I'm just, hey, I want to introduce myself because that's what I do."
Well, I think we've seen enough of Joe Burrow to know like there's not a scenario that's too big for him.
Yep.
He's going to be Joe Cool. We had a Joe Namath and a Joe Montana and now a Joe Burrow that is just Joe Cool. You know what I mean? And so I don't think it's ever going to be the stadium will ever be too big for him. And I think that's why a lot of people really like Joe Burrow. It's because he is what he is, and he is what he is, regardless of whatever else is going on around him.
Right. Yeah, and I think he has this persona, but he also seems like while he's a very confident individual, and he's not afraid to display that. And he's confident in his abilities, but also just seems like a pretty good down to earth guy. Which is
you say down to earth, but have you seen the way he dresses?
I mean, well, but that's what the young guys do now, Kyle. That's that's what the young guys do. Well, kind of segueing a little bit of that into this topic of sportsmanship, we've all seen what happened with Michigan and Wisconsin a few weeks back. Juwan Howard, the coaches get in, and there's been a lot of debate of who officially started it. I'll kind of, if anybody was under a rock and didn't see this, essentially Wisconsin's up by 15 or so. Michigan scores a basket. They press. Wisconsin's got in their, into their bench. It's at the end of the game. Coach calls a timeout to work his team through press offense. Juwan Howard didn't like that. in the handshake line, tries to blow past the Wisconsin coach. Whatever you want to say, did physically stop him and tried to have a conversation and probably was not using very nice words. Things get a little heated. There's some pushing. Other coaches and other players get involved. And then we saw the kind of the end where Juwan Howard, I wouldn't say hit the guy, but just kind of swatted at the one of the assistant coaches at Wisconsin. He's now suspended for the rest of the regular season. I think he'll be back for their conference tournament later this week. Michigan right now, I think, is firmly in the tournament, so I guess he'll be there for March Madness as well. So, but just thinking through kind of sportsmanship and kind of what that looks like. I know, you mentioned Wrigley's in baseball. Our kids, I hope, will participate in some level of sports in one way or the other, and just the importance of that and how it was really disappointing to see. This was not 18, 19-year-old kids acting this way. These were grown men and coaches acting this way.
Yeah, it was. It's a bad look all the way around. I think it's a bad look for Wisconsin as well.
For sure.
There was the confrontation between Juwan Howard and whatever the Wisconsin head coach's name is, but then that assistant coach came in, and I feel like the assistant coach had to say something, right?
For sure, yeah.
And at the end of the day, you just be bigger than the moment that you're in. If you're a coach, show the young boys, show your players how to act in those situations.
Yep.
Things didn't go right for you. Okay. You don't like the idea that they call a timeout to talk through, how to beat the press. Fine. But just shake a hand and move on. And look, I have been there. When I was coaching football, we had a game where we got beat pretty good. And the opposing coach actually called a timeout late in the fourth quarter. They have the ball. All they got to do is just run the clock out. And he calls a timeout for whatever reason. And I told him in the line walking through, I said, that was classless. He didn't like it, and I shouted a few times, you're classless. Probably not my best look.
Looking back on it, could have handled it a different way.
Definitely could have handled it a different way. Could have just shaken a hand and moved on. But in the heat of the moment, you say things and you do things that you're not proud of.
Sure.
But you know what? I didn't hit anybody.
Yeah.
I just said, hey, I thought that was a classless move, and I think you're a classless person because of it.
There you go. That boy getting after him. So here's my thoughts on this whole thing. Number one, I think the fact that he was ticked off that they called a timeout is Bush League. Because if you know this just as well as I know this, and it may be different for basketball than it is for football, but I don't think it is, especially in that moment. When, you may say, oh, they've got their scrubs in, but those scrubs might not be just walk-ons. They might be guys that are looking at, hey, this is going to be a guy that contributes to us next year. And if it's a moment where we're not handling this well, I want to call a quick timeout because it's a teachable moment to work on these kids' games to get them better. So when they're in this moment again, they will handle it better. Then I have no problem with that. And I think the fact that he got upset over it is ridiculous. Now, in saying that what the Wisconsin coach did as well was completely out of bounds. You don't put your hands on another grown man, and that escalated it beyond. So I think they're both in the wrong there. And then obviously the slap or whatever you want to call it. I mean, he deserved the suspension, and I'm sure he immediately regretted it doing it, and it sets the wrong example for his kids. But when I'll be honest, when I saw the whole thing transpire, I was like, that was because he got upset over a timeout, when if the roles were reversed, he probably would have done the exact same thing. And that's not classless. That is me handling my team the way that I want to handle my team and prepping my team the way I want to prep my team. And at the end of the day, if you're upset that you're down 15 and I called a timeout, then don't get down 15.
Right.
And so that was my whole take on it. But it's just interesting to see. There's been a couple other things that have come up over the last couple of weeks about this kind of sportsmanship as well. One of them involves my guy that I go back and forth on. So basically the whole season, and it's been more of conference play, but even some out of conference games. Calipari does not shake hands at the end of the game. Like his whole thing is it's COVID related, and he doesn't want to, transfer anything. And I think it did originally start because one of their coaches had tested positive, but they at the end of the game, they all kind of wave their hand and throw the deuces, and that's it. Well, at Arkansas, I was at the game. They played at Arkansas last weekend, and Kentucky not only did they not shake hands, with like 2 seconds left in the game, Arkansas is going to win the game. I guess in order to avoid a potential court storming incident, Cal sends his players to the locker room with 2 seconds left. Empties the bench, tells them all to go. And I get it to a certain degree, because they have been in situations in the past where even at Arkansas, some fans got a little unruly, got a little close to the players. And then at Indiana stormed the court when they beat them in 2012, and Kentucky player almost got hurt, and there was this huge, huge deal. But I wanted to ask you as a coach, if you were in that setting, do you buy the not shaking hands thing? And then two, where are you on this whole like shaking hands after a game deal? And then two, would you ever send your guys to the locker room 2 seconds early?
As far as the not shaking hands deal, if he's going to say he's doing it because of COVID, I'm not going to argue there.
Even though his guys have been sweating all over the other team for 40 minutes.
Yeah, but he hasn't.
That's fair. And I love the guy. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. I've gotten to the point where for me, it's just like, look, whatever you feel comfortable with as far as COVID goes, I'm good with it.
Sure.
And maybe people exploit that to some degree. I don't know, but I'm not going to begrudge anybody their COVID stance.
Yep.
As far as sending my players, the first thing you got to do as a coach is protect your kids. So if he was worried about a court storming incident, I don't necessarily know that I blame him, especially if he's looking up and he's seeing that student section all file down from the stands onto the court. If he's seeing it, then he definitely, that worries me. The whole storming of the court or running onto the field or whatever, you put your players in a bad situation. I've been part of games where it's happened.
Sure.
On both ends. I've been where they've stormed the field because they beat us, and we stormed the field because we beat them. And in both situations, I'm looking at the opposing team walk through a crowd of fans
that are antagonizing them. That you know they are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that's a bad situation.
It is. I will say in this example, the thing that I think kind of ticked me off a little bit about it was number one, Arkansas, like the day before, their AD came out and said, please do not storm the court if we win, which is a little presumptuous, even though they did win. But said, hey, our players will come to you. I think they were the next time they stormed the court, they were up for a $500,000 fine. But, it seemed like Arkansas was prepared to do the things that they needed to do to avoid that. Just knowing Calipari, I think it was kind of like I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of watching us walk off after we've beaten you. So we're just going to walk off right now. Now, obviously the kids on the floor stayed on the court, but I don't know. There's just something about that bothered me a little bit, but Cal's going to do Cal, without a doubt. So, let's see what else we got going on here. Let's stay in college basketball just a little bit. It's been a wild couple of weeks, and it's about to get even wilder. We are in March, which is the most exciting time of the year if you're a college basketball fan. We've had a lot of kind of fluctuation at the top with teams losing. What was it last weekend? Numbers 1 through 6 and 9 all lost. So there's been a lot of stuff going on. I think the conference tournaments will probably be just as exciting that. But as you kind of look through conference tournaments, Kyle, what's maybe one or two things that you're looking forward to as you watch some of these conference tournaments while you're maybe also at work?
Well, for me, the only conference tournament that I care about is the SEC tournament. Hoping to see my Bulldogs get at least one win while they're there.
Is Ben Howland on the hot seat? Like, is he?
I feel like he's got to be. I think we have the players to be a NCAA tournament team, get one of the at-large bids, and we're not going to do that again this year. So, to me, I think he's got to be, but I don't know.
What is that as somebody who's a state fan? Like, what's your reading on Howland? You know, I mean, he came in after Rick Ray, who was a disappointing hire following Rick Stansbury. You know, he hasn't. I think they've only had one. He was hired in 2015, so we're going on. This would be 7 years. I think only one NCAA tournament appearance, and they lost to Liberty in that appearance. So, like, what's your, as a state fan? Yeah, I mean, he went 14-17, 16-16, 25-12, where they went to the NIT. 20 probably could have made the NCAA tournament that year. 23-11, but lost in the first round. Obviously, didn't have a season in 2020, and then 21 again, 18-15 went to the NIT, and now 17-14. Is the Ben Howland experiment over? And are you, as a state fan, are you ready for it to be?
I'm a football guy. I'm a baseball guy. I'm much less of a basketball guy. So for me, it's not a huge deal. But I feel like if he sticks around, then we're settling for mediocrity, because that's all he's really ever been, is very mediocre Mississippi State basketball program under him. But the question still remains, like, what are we going to have coming back if we get rid of him? It's not like State's a magnet for great coaches,
right?
On the basketball end. So I think it really comes down to just who do we bring in if it's not Ben Howland. I'll tell you, I thought it was a good hire at first. You know, coming in from UCLA and all, I thought, okay, this guy, maybe we're not, you know, an NCAA tournament team right off the bat, but I think he can get us to where we're there, you know, every year, every other year, and that'd be good. But one time we lost in the first round, like,
yeah. Well, I mean, being somebody that follows college basketball, especially SEC basketball, pretty closely, I mean, I would consider this year, and I don't know how we got off on Mississippi State basketball is a big topic here, but I would consider this year pretty disappointing. I mean, Iverson Molinar is one of the best players in the SEC. They've got some good depth, but they just haven't been able to put it together. Finished below 500 in the league, in a league that's, you know, I mean, it's top heavy, but I would really expecting Mississippi State to be one of the top maybe 5 or 6 teams, which would be battling for a postseason bid. But
I think that's where a lot of people kind of thought Mississippi State was going to be, and we just never lived up to it. Speaking of living up to expectations, I feel like your Cats, though, are kind of right where everyone expected them to be, right?
For the most part. I mean, you know, after the SEC slate started, I thought, okay, they're in prime condition to be one of the top, probably 1 or 2 seeds. I mean, this is going to sound like an excuse. I do feel like that they can put a little bit on scheduling. So if you look at kind of how the SEC scheduling unfolded, two of the West teams that Kentucky had to go to play an at game. They had to go play at Auburn and at Arkansas and did not get a return game. And those 2 losses essentially is what basically had them where they would not own any tiebreaker against Tennessee or Arkansas or Auburn. And so, you know, naturally they're in a 2-way tie for second with Tennessee, but because Tennessee played Auburn twice and got them at home and beat them, Tennessee gets the 2 seed. So Kentucky's the 3 seed. The weird thing is they may be they're the 3 seed in the SEC tournament, where if they win the SEC tournament, they will likely be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So it's pretty weird to see that happen. But I feel really good about Kentucky. I mean, they've taken some losses, but they're finally healthy. And I think, and I don't say this as a homer, but I think when they are healthy and on a neutral court, I think they're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. And I think that they'll prove that because they played in some really tough environments and were able to handle them for the most part. And to this day, I think they have the best win in college basketball when they went to Kansas and won by darn near 30. So I think it ended up being 18, but they were up close to 30. So we'll see. But oddly enough, the SEC tournament's not my favorite one. It never fails that the Big East tournament is always
that's true.
Amazing. And I think it will be again this year. I mean, Providence is one of the top teams in the country. Villanova, UConn is a really good team. Seton Hall, Xavier's playing for a tournament life. So I'm excited. I will probably watch more Big East basketball than I will SEC. I'll just watch a couple of good SEC games, but it should be a fun time for sure.
Oh yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun to watch. And the madness always starts with these conference tournaments. We talk about March Madness starting that first weekend, but no, we usually get some fun stuff happening in these conference tournaments.
Yep. It's going to be exciting for sure. Well, we will when we come back in a few weeks with our next show, we'll do. Hopefully, we will definitely have a bracket by then, but we'll take a look at it and maybe we'll get some predictions out next Selection Sunday to see kind of what you and I are thinking. And this is peeling back the curtain really big time. But I was thinking about this the other day. Did you win the bracket pick'em of ours? Do you have that trophy?
I don't know who has it, but it's not me.
Okay, I don't either. I think it might be my brother-in-law, but I'm not entirely sure who has it. I've got to do some digging into that because it's time to bring that thing back. But back to our podcast. All right, Kyle, last thing here, and then we'll kind of hang it up. MLB season is hanging in the balance. You talked a little bit about it earlier. They've canceled spring training, obviously. First couple of series of the season. Just your gut feeling. Do we get an MLB season?
My gut says we do. We're obviously not going to get a full season.
Right.
But my gut says we get a season. And we get a World Series. And I think baseball finds a way. They've done what was that, 95 when they had the lockout and didn't get a World Series? Yeah. 94?
Yep.
And baseball still remembers how bad that was for the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And for the league itself. And I think they're going to not do that again. But I do see this thing bleeding into May, June, and maybe we get a 60-game, regular season and then a playoff and crown a champion.
Could this come at a worse time for Major League Baseball? I mean, one, baseball was already kind of riding a little bit of a high, and then we had the 2020 season where there were no fans, and then 2021 was such a fun baseball. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't Braves fans, but it was cool to see this kind of magical run by the Braves. They beat the hated Astros. I mean, it seemed like baseball ended on such a high note last October, and then they're just crapping the bed now and can't get their stuff together. And I would imagine all that momentum that they had, last time this happened, they said, well, we're just going to stop checking for steroids and see if that helps us out. And it did.
It did.
But I can't imagine they've got much else to turn. They've got to. I mean, they're shooting themselves in the foot, right?
They absolutely are. But at the end of the day, the owners don't care. They're playing the long game.
Yeah,
it's an investment for them, and they're going to make sure that they take care of themselves. The players have have something to lose, and that's why they're going to be the ones that end up having to give on this. And
Yep.
And that's just kind of the way it works.
It's a microcosm of our society, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
There we go. This is your economics educational moment provided by Dr. Castles and his assistant, Mr. Draper. So, all right, Kyle. Well, this is fun, man. I'm glad to have gotten back into a little podcasting with you, a little dad talk, quite a bit of sports talk. The world news, 2 years in COVID, all kinds of fun, exciting. But it was most enjoyable to see your beautiful face and to hear your lovely voice and to spend this hour with you once again.
Man, I really enjoyed it. It's always good to hang out with you.
It is good to hang out with me. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We're working on booking another guest, an upcoming guest, Jason Romano. He's with Spectrum Sports. Check them out. We were originally going to do it next weekend, but he had something come up and he wants to do it the next weekend, but I'm out of town. So we will eventually have another show in episode 95. Like I said, we're going to get to 100, but it may be 2024 before we get there. But make sure you can check that out. But while you're waiting, we got a list of shows in our library. Just check out dadswatchingsports.com or go wherever you listen to podcasts and just type in Dads Watching Sports. If you've yet to check out our last couple of episodes with Jared Lopes, Jacob Scrimshire, Damon West, very much encourage you to do those. There were some really great conversations that we had about dad life, sports, anything and everything in between. But that's it for tonight. Kyle Castles, I'm Michael Draper. Y'all stay safe out there, and we will see you again soon. Take care.